Uh, Good afternoon, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. My name is Charlie Muirhead. I'm the founder of a business called CognitionX, and we spend our time trying to bring some clarity to this very fast-paced, incredibly fast-paced, as we're going to hear in a minute, world of artificial intelligence. And we have an extraordinary panel that I'm going to allow to introduce themselves in a second. Now, we don't have a huge amount of time for today's session, so we're going to gallop through a number of topics, but start with allowing each panel member to introduce their business and explain a little bit about what it is that they have been working on. And we've said, between 1 and 3 minutes each, and then we're going to get into the discussion. So I'm sure we'll run out of time. If anybody wants to continue the conversation afterwards, we'll make sure that we're available outside this room immediately after this session. And with that, I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Yong Zhao. I'm from Beijing. I founded a company called DeepLink, which is one of the earliest artificial intelligence company in China. We built autonomous driving vehicles. We also make smart video analysis system for surveillance for retailer business. Recently, we've been making software to help doctors to read medical images. So basically, this is what we do.
Thank you. And just a little bit more about the company. You're based in China. How many employees at the moment?
A little bit more than 200.
Okay. And where are you from a fundraising standpoint at this point?
So we raised funding for the DeepLink company and also the companies that we spin off, like the autonomous driving. So together we have raised more than $100 million US.
Okay. So you guys are very much up and running, and you're written or described as China's first AI company. How did you get that title?
I was with Google Research many years ago. So when I first came back to China in 2012 to raise some funding and to talk about artificial intelligence, nobody really understand. Well, not many investors really understand what is artificial intelligence. So back then, the most popular thing in the startup community is O2O, wearable computing. Because I was a member of Google Glass team, so everybody told me that if you make a knock-up Google Glass in China, we like to invest you. But nobody really cares about artificial intelligence back then. So we started with little money in an apartment building. And then a few months later, suddenly Google acquired this company called DeepMind. And I was part of the effort who, look into this company when I was at Google. So then all the investors, recall this is a crazy guy last year, talking to us, talking something about artificial intelligence. We should give him some money. So suddenly, we got a lot of money, and we have a lot of people to come into the company, and we are playing together on multiple directions. Pretty cool. So.
Yeah, fantastic. Congratulations. Rachel. You have a very different perspective, and you had this mind-blowing January. Tell us a little bit about what you do and what happened at the last CES.
Sure. So thanks everyone for having me. My name is Rachel Horn. I'm with the Consumer Technology Association. We do two things that we're probably best known for. One is we put on CES. We don't call it this, but it is the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. 180,000 people, we gather them in Las Vegas, 60,000 international attendees. It is the world's largest innovation event. It's always really exciting to be at other people's event and feel that same energy, so I'm so thrilled to be here. The other thing we do is we represent 2,200 consumer technology companies. So that's more than 2,000 tech companies. All of them are American or they have a US subsidiary, and we are their voice in Washington. So we're really grappling with a lot of the policy challenges around AI. On the CES side, and I'd love to go through some of those, especially around workforce automation. On the CES side, AI it's everywhere at CES this year, and what we saw this year at CES 2017 was more useful, practical applications of AI and automation on the show floor. So there was self-driving car technology, there was health and wellness technology, and probably the most interesting thing that I saw was just the sheer number of devices and applications that had integrated Amazon's Alexa. So on site at CES this year, there were 7,000 different user-generated applications for Alexa. That number has spiked to 15,000 in July. That's nearly double. So Alexa was probably the biggest piece of technology at CES this year that wasn't actually at the show. They didn't have a booth representing Alexa. It was just embedded into everything. And so seeing how that voice recognition technology is being used by the entire consumer tech ecosystem, even in self-driving cars, like Ford uses, Ford announced a partnership with Alexa this year at CES, so it's really remarkable.
I'm going to have to steal that microphone off you. I'm dying to dig into more about your work in Washington in particular, because there's a lot of interest there, obviously, in policy and around AI. Mirav, you have a brand new business doing some groundbreaking work, and we had a chance to catch up yesterday and a few days ago as well. Why don't you just explain a little bit about why you started the company and what you're doing?
I have a PhD in postdoctorate in the area of artificial intelligence, and I researched a lot of years how people socialize with each other, and we try to imitate this ability and to apply this to computers and machines. All of my work was theoretical work, and we applied them in a synthetic world. And it was very excited to try and to implement it into the real world. I worked for several years with the Army, and then I established this startup. And what we are doing here, we are applying social skills to machines and enable them to socialize with other machines and humans. So it's a very excited area, so this is the reason.
So this technology enables autonomous AIs to talk to each other.
Yes,
and collaborate with each other.
Yes, it enables autonomous interaction with each other like humans, because as humans we have in frontal lobe of our brain we have a social skill. We're born with this social skill. We can interact with each other in autonomous manner, but computers cannot do it. So we imitate this part of the brain and inject it to computers and machines and enable them to interact with each other in an autonomous manner and with humans.
Amazing. So, and will the AIs be able to interact with other AIs as well as human actors? So it's a way of communicating across both AI to human and human to AI, as well as AI to AI.
It also AI to AI and AI to human. We imitate the social skills. We imitate the collaboration processes and the competitive processes that we have in our brain.
Amazing. And where are the first applications? Where's the early engagement for your technology?
The first application we inject social skills to bots in games, in gaming companies, and in simulators. But we are looking for additional applications like robots in the warehouse. In the case of robots in the warehouse, there are hundreds or thousands of robots that need to interact with each other. There are a lot of unexpected events. So it is impossible to manage all these events or all these interactions by pre-coding. So we add this ability to the robots. We plan to add this ability, for example, to robots in a warehouse or in a production flow.
So it's effectively enabling them to figure out how to deal with unforeseen events in real time by thinking how to work together.
Yes.
Amazing, amazing.
Yes.
So we've obviously got three very different perspectives on the panel, and it would be great to hear first. Tell us what's going on in China at the moment. AI, it's obviously a big topic everywhere in the world. It's further flattened the world because we have this extraordinary contribution to the open source community and cloud infrastructure and so on. You were the first AI company in China. What else is happening in China?
It's crazy. It's like a few years ago, nobody talked about AI, but now every single company, regardless what they do, they become AI company. This is just crazy. But I think it's great that many people now heard of AI and pay attention on AI. And China is a huge market on many different things, such as transportation, medical applications, and also manufacturing, which offers us a lot of opportunities to really look into the how to apply the original technology in machine learning into something which can really change the way they make their business. I've seen more opportunity. For example, I've seen more opportunity in China than the rest of the world to use AI product. For example, there's more than 500 million people in the China's rural area. Those people, they don't have a good access to a good hospital or good doctors. And now AI can help them to examine their medical data and their medical images to tell them what's going on in their body. There's so many factories in China, and even now, nowadays the cost of the human labor in those factories is becoming higher and higher, which threat the competition of those companies. So right now they're badly looking for solutions to improve their, for example, how to measure the product, how to measure the toolings in the whole process.
And so China's an interesting market in that, it's such a huge domestic market. We could almost think, okay, well, that's its own microcosm, if you like, the very big one. But there's a lot of conversation now about which country is leading the charge in AI, and will all the spoils go to one dominant player? What advantages or disadvantages do you think there are to building AI in China? Is the domestic market a good thing and a bad thing because it kind of keeps the companies occupied there? Where are we in terms of things like access to data and privacy? So it would be great just to, how would you think about the pros and cons of building an AI business in China today versus in Silicon Valley?
Compared to Silicon Valley, I think China has some advantages and some disadvantages. Let me talk about the good things first. So first, we have a lot of data. Let me give an example. When we work with our surveillance customers and we talk about data, we wanted to build a software which can recognize individuals from billions of samples. So first of all, we need to have a lot of data. And the next day, our customers offers us the opportunity to access every single citizen's image data.
You have the ability to do that?
We cannot copy this data to other company,
Okay.
but within our customers' facility, we can access those data and use those data to train the best model ever.
Yeah.
And also, we have easier access to the medical data of billions of people. So therefore, it's easier for us to build the best model.
Because that area of privacy, medical data, very, very sensitive in many different dimensions, but are there equivalent protections for privacy in China to those in Europe and the US?
I think even in China, there's very heavy protection on those data. This is what I'm talking about. We can use those data to train model, but we cannot get those data out for other applications. But I think it'll be extremely difficult to do the same thing in Europe or in America.
Okay. So Rachel, you're very much involved in the big discussions in Washington, representing the vendors as well as the community. And you couldn't have been more in the center of this explosion, the consumer explosion, obviously, with CES and Alexa's arrival. Where's the conversation gotten to in Washington right now?
Well, it changes daily. The last administration put out a couple of white papers on AI, and they really set the stage for exploring some of these issues. So the Obama administration last fall in October and in December put out two papers. The second one really focused on the future of work and what we can do to prepare. The second one laid out sort of what the government knows and what they want to know. Congress held its first exploratory hearing on AI in November. So again, it's been less than a year that we've been really having these serious discussions about AI in Washington. So there's a knowledge gap. There's a lot of discussions that still need to be had.
Just to get up to speed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Where we are, where some of the challenges and some of the areas that we're focusing our attention are really on automation and the future of work. We are it looks like if you look every week, there's another conference on that topic, exploring that topic. But these are really important conversations to have because you can't put your head in the sand and say it's all going to be great. I mean, the practical benefits of AI and these new technologies are amazing and life-changing, and we tout those successes. But we really need to think thoughtfully about what it means for job displacement. So there's been a lot of talk about lifelong learning and education models, something that some companies are talking a lot about are apprentice models similar to what you see in Europe. We don't have that system in the United States. The average apprentice makes $300,000 more in his professional career than somebody who doesn't have that skill set. And so we're thinking about, are there ways to expand the apprenticeship model beyond plumbing and electricity? And some of the conversations that we're having are, there will be winners and losers in this tidal wave of displacement. We've seen these shifts before. I mean, if you look in the 1400s, when the printing press was invented, the wood engravers freaked out. They literally stopped the presses until they realized that there were job opportunities for them. They still needed people to illustrate the new books that were coming off the presses. So we see these shifts happening with regularity throughout history. The shifts are happening more frequently. And so we're thinking about how can we educate and train the workforce of the future. So we're looking at apprenticeship models. And given that there will be winners and losers in the market, there are people discussing ideas about maybe some of the companies that do fare really well in an age of automation and AI need to think about an apprenticeship model at their organization. Bring in the losers, bring in the companies that fold. Those people have skills, they just need to be train them up, spend 6 months or 8 months training them up so that they can really provide value to your workforce.
So it's a huge topic. Steve Mnuchin is on record saying he didn't think AI was going to impact for 50 to 100 years. And it's good to hear there's an educational process taking place. How long do you think that's going to take? And do you see progress? What are the first policy debates that are taking place?
Sure.
Because we're jumping to the future of work thing, which is an important forward-looking thing, but right now there are, as we all know, there's AI happening all around us.
Right. So, the truth is nobody knows. Hopefully nobody in this room has the answer. I don't think anybody knows how automation is going to play out, how the job force is going to be fundamentally changed by AI. We're having these conversations now. We're talking with our members. It's important that our members, and I think they do. You see the leaders, all of the tech powerhouses are talking about the implications of AI. It's like the news story every day when you open up Twitter or look online. So they get it. People get it. What happens next in Washington and among our member companies, what we're advocating for is we don't want any prescriptive policies that will inhibit innovation. We don't want that would inhibit it, right?
Yeah.
So we need to think through, establishing frameworks and guidelines that are, industry and government collaborations working together to think through these topics. So those are the conversations we're having now.
Thank you, Merav. Tell me a little bit about, the exciting things that you see your technology enabling. You talked about gaming, and any of us who played games, I've gotten lost in playing games. It's great fun from an entertainment standpoint, but where can we really solve a difficult problem that's going to make a positive contribution?
I think that where we need people have social skills. They work together, they have teamwork, and all the places that can benefit from teamwork and working together, this is the place. The example of the production floor or the warehouse is one of the examples. Another example is smart cities, IoT, cybersecurity. Everywhere that teamwork is necessary, our company can contribute to this.
So take security. That's something that I think challenges everybody. So in your domain, your technology would enable security systems to collaborate?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Because also in the Army, we have a lot of soldiers working together to achieve to defense. It is possible to defense alone as a single.
And how much of the intelligence to do that needs to be built into the AIs that you're connecting together? Or do they rely fully on your infrastructure and your cloud to enable that collaboration to work?
We have infrastructure only for social skills. We don't focus on, for example, image processing, which is another aspect of the AI, or NLP, natural language processing. We only focus on the social skill, on the collaboration. So our platform enables a computer to socialize, but the other aspects like image processing is another problem, a big problem in AI, for example.
So, and what do you call that intelligence?
Because it's social skills, because
Okay.
Because we imitate the social part of our brain.
So, just to come across all three of you with very different backgrounds, a perspective on China. You're building this company here in Israel. So, AI is happening everywhere. Washington, complicated place to get things done. When we look at the landscape, do we think there is going to be a clear winner who's going to end up dominating from an AI standpoint, and they're going to acquire lots of companies? Or do we see a future where there's going to be, through the kind of leveling of the playing field, lots and lots of companies that specialize in different areas and are able to succeed without being part of one of the big tech giants? I mean, where do you see the future for your business? Is it as part of another company, or do you see it growing up into being a standalone business in its own right?
This is a very interesting topic. I think that at this stage of development, the scale of the data and the scale of the market will be a major driven power for artificial intelligence industry. I do feel that, well, first of all, I decided to move from Silicon Valley to China because I feel like if I work in China, it's much easier for me to collect a lot of data to build the best product on the market sooner.
Okay, so it was a data-driven reason for moving your R&D to China.
Yes.
Okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah, and also, but as we trying to push the technology to the market, we do see a lot of obstacles. Because AI fundamentally change the efficiency, and when the efficiency improvement somehow harm the interest of certain people. For example, if you wanted to push a medical AI product to hospitals, the first thing you're going to see that the doctors really hate it. It really threat, the justification of their work over there, right? So it's and in China, most of the good hospitals are state-owned. In a state-owned business, it's very hard, to remove jobs, and the government will not support that. But in America, most of the medical institutes are private-owned. So improving efficiency is more important than securing some people's job.
So in China, they would be looking to improve the use of radiology AI, for example, to improve detection of a tumor, but they wouldn't be doing it with the perspective of can we remove headcount and save money. They would be doing it because they want to improve the accuracy of the diagnosis. Whereas you think in a kind of a capitalist model where you have commercially operated hospitals, they're going to be thinking about how many jobs can they save.
Yeah, this is why I believe that specifically for medical applications, AI will first shine in places where there's not many very good high quality medical services. And furthermore, I would believe that places such as Africa and South America, where good high quality medical service is not there yet.
Sure.
It's actually easier for AI to be populated in those markets.
Like a telemedicine type
So
use
it will
case.
be interesting to see that maybe in that market, AI, specifically on medical, will be advanced sooner than more matured market.
And so coming back to the question of, do you see the benefits accruing to the largest player in China, or do you see a market, especially with access to the data through these state-owned organizations, enabling there to be a spectrum of companies that each succeed in different areas?
Yeah, I think so.
You think so?
I think so.
Do you think there'll be many successful businesses rather than just one?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think that's a question that's on the tip of many people's tongues as they look at this market. Rachel, how would you see that playing out in America? We obviously have some enormous tech giants in America today, as we do in China. You know, are we going to see a fertile ecosystem and individual winners, or will it ultimately end up being a game with a few large players?
So that was a really interesting perspective on why you chose to innovate in China. That's you know, at CES. One of the amazing things is we have 60,000 international attendees. We have these huge delegations that come from countries all over the world, including Israel, including France, including China, and so you see firsthand that there are really bright minds creating amazing technologies everywhere. So, you know, again, do I think the first person who creates artificial superintelligence will go down in the history books forever? Probably yes. Like that is someone you're going to want to have at your dinner table discussion someday. But
and are you going to tell us who that is and where they are? Because these guys want to invest.
You got to come to CES in January and find them, right?
Okay.
They'll be there. I mean, I guess that's what's really special about CES is that they'll be there. All of these bright minds are there.
How many people exhibit at CES?
There are 3,500 exhibitors. There are 180,000 attendees. So it's massive. I mean, it's, you know, the average person who comes has more than 30 meetings on site.
Right.
So it's like you come, you make your deals, you meet with investors, you meet with collaborators and people that you want to partner with.
And so you see the market evolving to one where there's a lot of success stories and individual...
I hope so, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, great. Mirav, what's your perspective on the market? How do you see it evolving?
I also see it the same. A lot of companies, each of them is specialized in one area, unexpected.
As standalone businesses?
Yes,
okay.
Standalone businesses.
So we've got a few minutes left to get through, and I want to make sure that we get to some of the most exciting new things you see taking place, as well as, you know, are there any policies or is there any call to action that people need to act on in the short term? So if we just zoom through, you know, what would you say is the most, outside of your own business, what's the most exciting thing you've been tracking or following in AI as a development? And I know you cover a lot of different domains, so that may be a little bit hard, but who would you pick out as something to keep track of?
To me, I've been working on surveillance, autonomous driving, robotics, and medical. I think that there are like multiple kids in a family. It's hard to say which one is more important, but it's very easy to say which one is older and younger. To me, surveillance is the oldest one because, you know, the demand is very strong, and the kind of cost that customers can, you know, accept is higher. But eventually, I would believe that medical will be the most influential, most important AI industry, because, you know, by the end of it, you know, people care about their health. That's the most important thing.
And who do you think is leading the charge in medical use of AI? Who would you call out as the gold standard today?
You mean which company?
Yeah.
Specifically in medical domain, I don't think there will be any single company which is going to dominate this industry. There are two reasons. One is that there's so many parts on people's body, and they are very different. And the second is that you need to get a lot of data to understand different medical problems. And those problems actually sometimes is regional. For example, in Japan, you know, the Japanese people, they actually have higher risk than the rest of the world to have cancers in the, excuse my terminology when it comes to medical problems.
Esophagus? Esophagus?
No.
Intestine?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And why people have more risk on the skin cancer? Even in China, yeah, I mean, people from different regions have different risk on certain different things. So it's hard to imagine that a company in a certain country can dominate all those opportunities. And AI specifically, I think data is very important. Second is that to apply this technology on the market, meanwhile, you can have more important data from the process where you apply those data. I mean, it has to be like you have few data, you build a few model, a good model, then you have a mediocre product, then you apply this product into the market, then you generate more data, and then you have more data, you have a better model, and so on and so forth, right? And the important thing is that you have to apply the technology to application to solve certain problems, to get started. So it's impossible for example, for American company wanted to solve something that specifically happens in India or some African countries.
Because the data set is different.
Yes,
exactly.
it's very different.
So you can see a reason for fragmentation by data set. So even within a region in China rather than the whole of China, and that makes sense. And so, in your world, with your perspective from DeepLearning, where would you say maybe outside of China you see the best example of somebody finding that data set and using it to improve delivery of medical diagnosis?
Well, I myself is a technical guy. I used to be a research scientist. I mean, AI at the beginning is very hard to get in because of those technical barriers, right? But just in the past 3 years, those barriers becoming lower and lower, and all the tool sites becoming open source, and they're becoming better and better, and also the chipset, the hardware, becoming more and more affordable. I'm seeing something like a Moore's law. Every 18 months, the hardware becoming cheaper, twice cheaper. But in AI, I feel like it's even more rapid. It's like 5 times cheaper this year compared to last year.
Yep.
So I would think that countries with fewer fragmentation will first achieve a lot of progress because they have more data. Once the product is out there, they can. It's a big market. But then places where smaller countries are. The countries are smaller and data are more fragmented. It's very hard for those companies to get in. And the technical barrier is lower and lower. I think the people in those countries, in those markets, they will adapt the technology, they'll work on their own problem, and they will achieve their own success.
So if you use an analogy of eBay, when online auctions became very popular, there was an auction company in every single country in Europe. And it was very fragmented, but ultimately eBay went and acquired companies across each of those domains. So do you see, this early part of the market is going to be localized and fragmented based on the local data set? Do you think it makes sense for those companies then to combine in the medical domain, or would they stay separate and go on to do other things within their own geography?
It is very hard to predict because in this case, regulation is going to play a very important role. And when it comes to that topic, I'm really not very, very sure.
Okay. Rachel, tell us about the US market. You see a huge number of vendors. I mean, I think you said the CTA is 2,400 members. You have thousands and thousands of people at CES. What's the most exciting thing you've seen emerge recently?
So I think healthcare is a really great example of the practical present day benefits of AI. If you think about from a job perspective, there's sort of 3 buckets of kinds of jobs that AI could take over. One are the jobs that we don't want to do. People don't want to go through hundreds of thousands of pages of legal documents. Might not be the greatest thing for the entire legal industry, but AI can solve those problems in matters of minutes. Then there are the jobs that we can't do. So you can create algorithms that will conceive of every possible car accident or scenario that could happen on the road, and you can download that information into your self-driving car technology in ways that the human mind just cannot conceive of all those ideas. And on the healthcare side, AI is helping us in areas where we need all the help that we can get, and we see it in cancer treatment and cancer detection, and that's a great example of the human-machine partnership, right? So we can use AI software, we can use AI to look at scans and detect cancer in ways that the human eye may not get. There are false positives, so you do need humans there to then look at those results at this point. But then there's still a human element there, right? There's a person who has a disease, and the human being can work with that patient to create a course of treatment together.
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Mirav, what do we need to do short term to make sure there's a positive transition to AI? I mean, every day in the newspapers we see things that talk about you know, the robots taking over, and obviously, you know, in the press, you know, it bleeds, it leads, so these kind of sensationalist stories are interesting. You know, in our discussions, I actually had a call with David Hansen this morning, who's, you know, his forecast is 5 years to general intelligence, which is one of the most aggressive I've seen, and he has this extraordinary robot called Sophia that he's been touring. She's actually become a celebrity in her own right, and getting booked to do conferences and so on. But you know, maybe it's 5 years, maybe, you know, it's 50 years. But in the short term, things are happening very fast. And, you know, we just heard that it feels like they're happening faster than Moore's Law, not slower. So, you know, are there any things that we need to put in place or think about, or do we just let this innovation happen?
I think that it is very philosophical question, because it depends who is the responsibility for doing the AI. If the responsibility of the companies, the technology, who develop the technology, or of the government, or if the responsibility belongs to the companies, so they cannot control what the other is going to do with their technology, because social skill can, for example, in our case, can help, but can do also negative, may have negative results from these skills. So we cannot control. I'm not sure we can control as a. So maybe it is the responsibility of the government. I don't know the answer. I'm not sure about the answer for this.
Rachel, what's your point of view? Is there anything in the short term we need to do? I mean, you know, I think, you know, been discussions about regulation. Do we need to put some kind of controls in place? Does this make any sense at all? Or you know, you mentioned earlier just allowing innovation to happen.
I mean, I think conversations like this and conversations that are happening both at the national and international level are really important. I think it's important to educate lawmakers and lawmaking bodies about the benefits of this technology and address the challenges, the privacy and security, cybersecurity, the workforce displacement, but work together. I mean, you know, one of the things that CTA does is we're a standards making body. We hold an event called PlugFest that literally helps. I mean, the original intent was making sure that all your plugs connect to one another and that your products work with one another. But we also put out, you know, dozens of standards every year to make sure that technologies work in concert with one another. So, you know, potentially down the line, there's a way that we could create some standards around AI that would, you know, help at the international level. But I think first we need to have these conversations about what does it look like, what do we want it to do without, you know, inhibiting that technology.
And in your discussions in Washington and as part of that kind of lobby, does the concept of UBI, Universal Basic Income, come up? Because you've mentioned kind of thinking about the workforce and the future of work.
You know, in every conversation it comes up. There are pros and cons to it. I don't think we have time to get into it here.
Can you see it happening in America?
Oh, I really, really don't know. I mean, we have a true, like, you know, work hard sense of work ethic. I don't personally, not speaking with my CTA hat on, I don't know that it would happen, but, you know, we'll see how it plays out.
Charlie? Our time is over. We have to go on to the next panel.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you to our panelists, and we'll be outside if there's any further questions you have for our wonderful panel. So thank you very much, and thank you, the audience.
Thank you very much.
No one to talk with all by myself.